Man, I have no idea what happened. It's like our WoW crashed hard. Man, I have no idea what happened. It's like our WoW crashed hard. Dude, it doesn't even matter about the money you spent, man. Like, a store like that needs customers who just spend, $5 and $10 a week. I mean, I'm not hating on the fact you spend consistent money. Don't get me wrong there. A store like that should definitely love you a little more. Um, the fact to me would be that, I mean, you were what I would consider one of the original customers at R&B Games. You were definitely one of the nicest ones, man. Honestly, if it weren't for you back in the day staying with me late sometimes, I mean, I didn't know crap about Statesville when I started helping Bev open R&B. If it weren't for you staying late and taking the trash out with me and stuff like that, man, I would have been a whole lot more miserable there. Oh, I know she has her favorites. Bev always did. Back in the day, Jeremy Eggert, that whole group. I mean, I remember. No, unfortunately, you never were. She she never seemed like she was the biggest fan of yours. But I mean that's still that. I have to look at that strange because to me it shouldn't be that way. I mean, when you run a business, yes, I get it. You're still human. You still have your favorites, quote unquote. But at the end of the day, when you're running a business and you've got a customer who spends decent money with you and is in there all the time, I mean, you got to take notice of them and you got to be able to be accommodating. I mean, I'll never forget one of the weirdest conversations I ever had with Beverly. I was like, it's like February or March of our first year. Um, she came in one Friday night, and it was one of those Fridays where we had packed out the house. We had Yu-Gi-Oh going, we had Magic going, and we had people in the front of the store, and we just didn't have enough room for everybody. And she came in and was talking to me, and the thing she said was, "Wow, we have a lot of people here. What's the deal? Are we not charging enough for entry?" And she wanted me to go up on entry fee for tournaments all because we had a whole bunch of people there. She thought that we must be charging too little for people to enter the tournaments. And talking about discounts, I mean, that's one of the last things that I ever talked about with her, and I'll never forget it. It's one of the last times me and Regina ever talked. But Regina was helping one of the comic book subscribers that, I mean, he would come in and talk to me almost every day and would buy some comics, come in, sit at the stool, talk to me while I worked, type of customer. And I convinced him to buy some new comics that weren't on his subscription list. Um, but I had to step away and do something, so Regina was running the counter for me. And she tried to ring him up full price for all of his comics. Well, of course the guy knew the policies, because, you know, we had everybody sign the paper and everything back then. I don't know if they still do. And for being a comic book subscriber, he was supposed to get his discount on all comic books that he was subscribed to and all comic books on the new comic book wall. And so he told Regina to go get me since she wouldn't give him the discount. And she came and she argued with me on it, and I finally had to just step in front of her, give the guy his discount, tell him I was sorry, and when I did, he left. And of course, when I did that, Regina went and talked to her mom about it, who quickly came up front to ask me what was going on and tell me I was in the wrong. To which I simply pulled out the contract that she and I had made for every subscriber to sign, and she and I made that together, and showed her where he was supposed to get his discount, and her only response to me was, well, I might just have to reconsider that. No apology, no nothing. Regina didn't have to apologize. Just, I guess, upset for being proved wrong. Yeah, there were a lot of things that happened there that a lot of people didn't see. And, I mean, there were definitely reasons why I was unhappy, especially towards the later months of being at R&B. You know, I was there to help Beverly build a business, not to be a slave for her. One of the other things that used to get under my skin about her was she wasn't there a lot. You know that. But I had to be there every hour the store was open, and somehow without ever being relieved, I had to go get food. But I know you know about that, because I used to leave people like you and Cody in charge of the store while I would run to go get food, or ask y'all to bring me back food. And I don't know. It's like when everything happened between me and Beverly, and I was no longer an employee, it wasn't bad news for me. I mean, it sucked, yeah. I mean, I really liked you guys, and I enjoyed my job. But at the same time, I got tired of being the work slave and being mistreated and underpaid. Um, at the time, I thought she was paying me well, but since I was 1099 having to pay my own taxes, it wasn't good. And then until I moved to the house I'm in now, it was a further travel for me. And they were doing that road construction up there. Man, it was awful. Yeah, man. No matter, like, that's the thing with you guys up there. Like you, Cody, Jeremy. Oh gosh, and Taylor. It don't matter how much time goes in between y'all and me talking. You know, if you guys ever need anything, you're more than welcome. You know, I will always be close to you guys and always thankful for the way y'all treated me and the friendship we had while I was up there. Y'all were a good bunch of guys. I won't forget that. I mean, shoot, it really was you guys in that small group that made coming up there worth it all the time. And dealing with some of the crap I had to.
Isn't ready yet.
In the end, I just wish it would have worked out differently. But, I mean, it's all good. I should have gotten to know Beverly a lot better before I decided to help her. Dude, if you guys hadn't been buying the store out of product, though, the store would have never made it. I mean, that's another thing. Like, I think she doesn't look at when she, talking about how she treats you. It was you guys that were coming in all the time and spending money and, you know, paying the wages and to keep the lights on and everything like that. I don't know how she can forget that. Oh yeah, Forest was a huge part of why R&B got off the ground. Forrest and another guy named Jeremy Sigmund were the very first two customers we ever had. They were there on that infamous day where Tim from the dugout came and chewed me out.
I can't cast that yet.
Okay, good. That guy left me alone. You talking about the regionals that Yu-Gi-Oh offered us and we never got? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm out of range. That skill isn't ready yet.
Yeah, dude, I don't know what it was. It wasn't just Beverly, though. Like, even Rusty at TCA, neither one of them had the scope for what those meant. If Beverly had just agreed to do that, the ridiculous amount of money she would have made, I'm sure would have kept her doing them for a long, long time. I mean, it was no different at TCA, man. He once talked to me about doing big events, and then that was it. It was a one-time conversation, and we could have done a whole lot, especially because I'd already planned one basically with you guys up in Statesville, and just couldn't get him on board. I don't know. I don't understand that at all, because I mean, if there's anything I would like to do, I would love to put on big events and do stuff like that. That just seems like fun to me. But I mean, to each his own, I guess. But yeah, I remember especially Beverly. We got that email, and man, I was stoked about it. I couldn't believe we were getting the offer. And took it to Bev. She told me she didn't want to be involved in it, but I was to put together a plan. And if it looked good enough, she'd go for it. And just put all that time into making the plan, and she didn't even give it 5 seconds when I presented it to her. It was, I just don't think we can do it. Oh, I remember. I remember. Because you were pretty stoked about it yourself, and you also knew how much money it was going to bring in.
It's too far away.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like you and I know because we took a look at it. But we had to buy all the product for Konami from Konami, and then Konami would have bought back anything we didn't use. I mean, there really wasn't a loss to be had at all in that situation. It was simply take the time to do it. Oh wow, that was nice. Thanks for the free money, Konami. I mean, I don't know. It will always baffle me.
Isn't ready yet.
And like I tried to explain to her, but if Yu-Gi-Oh offered us that event and we ran it well, the next thing you know, Magic and Pokemon would have approached us to run events too. I mean, she had hands down the best offer I've ever seen in any of the stores I've worked at. I'm not disagreeing, man. Like I said, that was the one business move out of her that I never could understand. It's like I know Bev didn't realize it, but I used to bring in cards out of my own collection and stuff that I was obtaining outside of the store, and bring them in the store and sell them to you guys, and take a store credit for myself. I mean, she wouldn't stock singles or anything either. I don't know. There's so many things done wrong in that store. Like on the singles, you know, she wouldn't. She set me caps and stuff on what I could spend on singles. But if a nice magic collection came in, however, suddenly I didn't have a cap. I think that cap was only there for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I never understood her hate for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know Yu-Gi-Oh! And its reputation. I know that reputation well. And it's, for the most part, unfortunately, a well-deserved reputation. But, at the same time, I mean, she had a large Yu-Gi-Oh! Customer base willing to spend money, and they weren't people that had the reputation Yu-Gi-Oh! did. You guys were great. You weren't the thieves, you weren't starting fights. You remember the thing we did in store. I don't know which thing you're talking about there. Oh yeah, and you guys always would buy out the singles. That's why the one very smart thing that I will always be thankful to some extent she let me do was when she let me go paid to that regional in Charlotte with you guys, and I spent the whole day doing nothing but taking the trade that the store had and getting cards that you guys wanted. So when we got back to the store, you guys could just buy what you wanted. Are you talking about the in-store tournament that happened that summer? Yeah, I remember it. Now, I don't remember any 100-person ARG thing, but I mean, that could just be time getting to me. Man, I can't remember. Things like that have escaped me. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think the kit, man, the kit may have been like 110. Because I do remember an ARG thing. I don't remember 100 people. I'm just gonna put the "Be Right Back" sign up because I don't have my game up. But I'll continue talking. I mean, there were several times where we had the whole place full back then. There was definitely a couple times in that store's life while I was there that if we had moved to capitalize on a couple of things, that we would have been in a much better position. It was just, getting the powers that were over me to agree to any of them. That was the difficult part. Probably would have been better if you'll need me or just went into business. I think I get what you're saying there, but I'm not entirely sure. Can you clarify that one? I think it would be very nice to go into business with someone who knows what they're talking about. That's for sure. Um, Beverly, of course, no offense to her, she knew nothing of comics or cards. Sure, she had been selling Pokemon online for a while, but I mean, she didn't know the card game. She didn't know how to play. She was learning that from me down at the dugout. Um, and then, no offense to TCA, but you know, again, he sold Pokemon, but he knew nothing about it. One of the things that I know me and Matt still get sort of a kick out of to this day was at the very end of it, he was making card lots for Troll and Toad, and he was making legendary Pokemon card lots. And he walks up to me and he goes, and I mean with this absolute serious look on his face, "Did you know Mewtwo was a legendary Pokemon?" And he talked about how he found out that Mewtwo and Lugia and a couple other Pokemon were legendary, and I was amazed at the fact that someone who I thought had all this knowledge on Pokemon uh, didn't even know who the legendary Pokemon were. So I mean, the one thing I can definitely say is I've never been in business with someone who truly knew um, the business in and out. Like not from a business standpoint, but actually knew the hobby and knew the games and everything like that. Oh yeah, I agree, man. See, and it was stuff like that that I didn't find out until the end. So I had no idea. It's just like another big problem that we had at TCA is we opened the business and we didn't have comic books for 6 or 7 months, and it wasn't because we didn't want them. It's because I couldn't get the powers that be to help me out, and it wasn't something that I, as a store manager, could really get done. They needed head honcho type people to deal with that. I mean, that's fine not to know. Like you're saying, you didn't know magic. If you don't know one or two pieces of it, as long as you're willing to get in there and learn it, that's the thing that matters. Um, myself and Bev, we didn't talk much. The whole time I was there, um, she and I didn't talk much, so she couldn't learn anything. I know that's why at the end, when before everything happened and I knew it was coming, um, I noticed that Regina had started, taking time to, stick around and learn some of the systems and stuff like that before it all went down, and that's when I knew it was all coming. And then at TCA, I mean, there were plenty of times where, you know, if if he had taken the time to just be patient and maybe learn something else, I think things maybe could have changed around there. I get that he was big into Pokemon and stuff like that, but that store had Force of Will that was real huge. Force of Will was huge in that store. Um, he should have taken the time to show interest in what the customer was interested in. Or when Dragon Ball Super got big, I know that was off the back of Pokemon dying off in the store, but Dragon Ball Super was having 30 and 40 people tournaments every week, and was having another 20 to 30 people show up on Wednesdays for a tournament. So, we were averaging about 50 people a week for tournaments just for that game. And I can remember he sat down Matt one time there at the end and was asking Matt why he was clocked out late on Wednesdays. And Matt had to explain, that's because the Dragon Ball tournament ran over late. And his simple explanation was, well, that doesn't matter, and I don't know how many people were there. Which, if he'd have just looked at his cameras, which I'm sure he did, he would have seen how many people were there. It was just him getting tight with his money. Um, as a store owner, especially when you're small, not PKBW level or anything like that. Though I truly think people at that level should too. But you need to be interested in what your customers are interested in. That's how you draw people in. That's how you bring in new customers. That's how you retain your customer base. Um, be interested in what your customers are interested in. For instance, when I came to R&B, I wasn't playing Yu-Gi-Oh. I hadn't played Yu-Gi-Oh in years. I played Yu-Gi-Oh because you guys were playing Yu-Gi-Oh. You were my customer base. I even had a red-white Magic deck at that time. Why? I wanted Magic players to come in and feel more welcome, so I learned a crap ton about their game until I felt I could hold a conversation with them. And then comic books, I was already into comic books at that time, so that wasn't a real tough one for me to do. Um, Being able to hold a conversation, especially in that kind of industry, being able to hold a conversation with the people who come through the door and give them confidence that anything you say and any recommendations you make are coming from a place of knowledge, that means a lot. Okay, what about D&D? I mean, I can talk to the guy who runs it to see. Um, Honestly, it's a pretty big group, and we don't even meet in person much. We do it over Discord a lot, and then there's a couple of things over Discord we use to make it, work. But the one thing I will say, talking about my my D&D group, it's a good group of guys. They're mostly customers left over from TCA that I still talk with. But the one thing that they do that I can't say it agitates me, but it does make some things difficult. Is, for instance, like this last, I told you I missed this past week. They had stuff going on. We had it scheduled for Friday because we try to play weekly, um, and it didn't work for them. So they rescheduled to Sunday. Well, Friday worked for me. Rescheduling to Sunday didn't, and it's kind of hard for me to have a say in that. I feel, because there are a lot more of them, and me and Matt are kind of the outsiders in that group. And my other thing is, like, I've got my business I run, I've got a family. Rescheduling on a whim like that, like we're supposed to play every Friday, and I can tell everybody, I've got this responsibility, clear this window of time for me every week. And when they change it, on the spur of a moment like that, it does put me in a bit of a bind sometimes. Um, but it's very fun, very fun. Um, but I'll see what I can't do, and if that group, doesn't want any more, I have a lot of people who are interested in D&D on my Facebook, and I can see if there's not another group that might be willing. And I know D&D over Discord might sound kind of weird. It's not that bad. Now I will say, like we trust each other to roll your dice and be honest about the results. Um, there are times where I just kind of look at the rolls that are happening. I'm like, huh, okay, I see. But to me, that's the only fatal thing. There's also a website called I think it's Roll20. I think it's the website we use, and it gives us a map for D&D that we can use. So I mean, we when we go into confrontations, we have, oh, I moved this much, and my spell has this much range. That way, we're not, you know off on that, so to speak. Mm. Family's great, man. Daughter started fourth grade this year. She's in the AIG or AG program, whatever you're used to it being called. So she's doing great in school. Wife got a new job 3 or 4 months ago, I want to say. She's still working at the hospital, um, but she's not a CNA anymore. She's working in like the medical records. Um, so she's a little bit more happy. Uh, Matt has been living with me for like a year or two now. But he's now a manager at PetSmart. So he's making pretty decent money. Um, Other than that, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Everybody's doing their own thing, but well, I mean, we're all good. What about you guys up there? I've talked to Cody in the past couple days since I've been streaming. Now I've caught up with you, so I haven't heard from Taylor, Jeremy, or Cass in a while. I don't know if you guys still talk to Cass or not. Don't talk to talk too much. Cass and Jeremy live together? Hmm. Oh, you don't talk to Taylor much. Yeah, when Taylor, because I hadn't seen any Facebook posts out of him in a while, but when I was looking in his Facebook every now and then when it would pop up on mine, I didn't see him ever talking about any of you guys anymore. That's for sure. And even though I didn't talk to Cody about it the other day, but it seems like he's mostly doing like food stuff anymore, like barbecue. I've seen him post some stuff about that. I mean, that's unfortunate, man. Taylor was a big part of the group back in the day, or at least that's how I perceived it. I gotcha. Wait, why not Cass? If Cass lives with Jeremy, I just find it interesting that you didn't mention him there. I gotcha. I can't say that ever since GCA closed down. Outside of playing Dragon Ball Super, I'm mostly to myself anymore as well. Just trying to do the grind, trying to get things done that I need to. Hoping one day to finally achieve the dreams I've had for years.
We are at war. Do not forget it.
I hope so too, man. Well, we'll see. Time will tell.
Lucky.
What about you? You still got any big dreams going for you? I know there for a while you were really wanting to open a store. I know you kind of had conditions that needed to be met to do so, but I mean, is that still a hope for you?
Lucky.
buying a house, I hope, not renting. Good man. I'm just that person who just can't see renting. I'm much more of a I'd rather own any day of the week. Do you know your price range for what you're looking at? I mean, or I mean, do you have your specifications, anything like that? Have you gone to talk to any banks about any loans or anything yet, or talked to a realtor? Because I'm sure you qualify for things like NC first time home buyer benefits and stuff like that. Well, that's not bad. Mine was 90, I think. Well, we went in looking for around 110 though. See, my home buying experience honestly started off kind of as a joke. Um, I told Charlene at that time that if we were going to live together, I didn't want to rent. But we didn't think we could get a loan for a house. And so we went and talked to state employees and couldn't get a loan through them. And well, we just kept going, and eventually we had a house. Uh, I mean, putting yourself in a bad spot is the term's relative. Um, as long as you're willing to work and do, I mean, can you really put yourself in a bad spot? Um, because if you buy a house, you're just investing into the house. Now, sure, you'll pay your interest and your insurance and all that kind of junk that goes into a home as well. But at the end of the day, anything you pay on the principal, when you go to sell the house, that's money back in your pocket. Um, so as long as you're, able to make your payments and you're not defaulting on the loan or anything like that, then I just don't see how it could ever be, a bad idea. Those are my opinions. They may not necessarily be correct. I'll be honest with you. That's just the way I view things.
Part of the plan?
You've got land, so like you're looking to build on the land or what? I gotcha.